Can you see that? Can you? Can you? I'm going to live long because by the time all this hair will be salt and pepper, I should be like in my 70s. And when they call me Auntie Duckers, I have to say, yes, baby, how can I help you? Because I believe. Welcome to my hair stories, and this is Dorcas. On this channel, we talk about hair-related content. I tell hair stories while I do my hair, or I share with you my hair experiences. So if you like this kind of content, do consider subscribing and leave a comment. Remember to like the video, and let's start. So, like I said in the beginning, in many African cultures, we believe that hair grays the older you become. And so normally at the naming ceremony of a child, the prayer is, you came to the world with dark hair, you will go out of the world with white hair, meaning you will live long. That was why I said I would live long at the beginning. Now, my first encounter or my fascination with gray hair began when I was a little child. And I was responsible literally for grooming my grandfather's beard. You know, those days when we used to sit down in the evening and watch the news on those big box television like this one, you know. And while they watched the news, I think the only way they could keep me quiet and still was by giving me the comb to occupy myself combing my grandpa's hair or his beard, as the case may be. And when I got to the age of 7, I remember my grandma also wanted me to take care of her gray hair, you know, and she would ask me to come and squash some lice and things in her hair. I don't know, but she did have itchy scalp and I didn't know the cause of it. I never saw lice, but she would just tell me to use my knuckles to squash whatever it is she felt was crawling in her hair. When I got to the age of 13, I met my other grandmother. That's my mother's biological mom. She didn't like gray hair. No, she did not like gray hair. She would usually go to the salon to dye her hair. And so I began to wonder, why wouldn't she keep her hair like the other grandma used to? You know, I didn't understand it until in my late teens, my mom also began to dye her hair. Now, from that line of my family, they have gray hair very early, and normally it is the front part. If you have been on this channel before, I have done videos on hair dyes, and why I cover my hair is because I also started graying quite young. I think the first time gray hair started appearing on my head or on my scalp, on my hairline, was in my late 20s. Yeah, but I went and I did some research. In my case, I think it was because I was anemic at the time. And I say so because after some years, I stopped growing gray hair, because actually when the gray hair started coming at the age of 26, I was dyeing my hair. When I stopped and I had settled down, meaning we're more comfortable in the country where we had moved to or we had migrated to, I noticed that the gray hair would receded. I didn't have much of gray hair again. Not until I came to Ecuador. That was in the year 2018, 2017. I think I came to Ecuador, and my gray hair started coming by 2019, you know. And so that was also when I started facing this chronic anemia again. So for me, it has been more of a health issue. But I think now with the hair, the whole hair strands turning gray, it should be related to age, you know, the aging process, because my mother, like I said, and my grandmother, that's her mom, all had gray hair at quite an early stage in life, which is why I now understood when I was an adult, my grandmother would always dye her hair because she was very young. She had my mom when she was 16. So when I met her, she was just in her late 50s and she just wasn't ready to embrace gray hair. So here are some of the myths that I've heard while growing up surrounding gray hair. I don't know if you've ever heard your mom telling you that you are not going to give her gray hair or you're going to give her gray hair before her time, meaning stressed out women or stressed out men, either way, will have gray hair. While that is true, it is chronic stress that can give you gray hair and not just one stressful event that will turn your hair into, that will turn your hair and not just one stressful event that will turn your hair gray. Another belief which led me to make my initial statement of this video is that only old people get gray hair, which was why I said by the time my entire head is gray, I should be in my 70s. Funny enough, that belief is spread across so many cultures, from Africa to Asia. We have the Chinese, the Japanese revering the elderly people who are gray-haired because we believe they have lived long enough, which in my experience is a little bit true or makes a lot of sense, because the Asians really take time to turn gray. Here's a picture of my friend and I, and she's in her 50s. Even here, the natives, which are by that I mean the Aztecs and the Native Americans, they do not grow gray hair that quickly. Like in this picture of my friend and I, she's in her 50s already, and when I went to her hometown, I noticed even her grandma, who is already in her late 70s, barely has gray hair, and so it would make sense that they would really consider that people who have gray hair must have lived for very long on the earth, thereby according them all that respect and wisdom, and even in the Bible, I think the Bible also associates gray hair with wisdom and long life. And we know that not every gray person is actually wise, okay? However, science has shown that genetics and certain health conditions can cause the hair to begin to gray even as early as your 20s, which, like I said in the beginning, was my own case. Now, this one for me, I found to be very funny, because I don't even know why people will be pulling out their gray hair. So I've seen that in Africa, and I saw that even among Afro-Ecuadorians. People tend to pull out the gray hair, believing that if you pull out your gray hair, you will not have more gray hair, or the reverse, where if you pull out one gray hair, more gray hair will grow. Come on now, make it make sense. That is not true. Your hair will turn gray strand by strand with time, and actually pulling out your gray hair or any hair at all damages your hair follicle. Okay, so that is not true. Then another one I didn't know is that many people believe that when your hair is gray, it becomes tougher and thicker, but actually what happens is, because as we age, the hair follicle itself, or the sebum production, becomes lower, so which makes the hair to feel coarse and dry. It's not that the hair itself is just due to the fact that our scalp is producing less sebum, which leaves our hair drier and more wiry. Okay, then another funny hair myth that I believed back in the days. Actually, I saw this on YouTube by one lady called Green Beauty. I'll look for her page, maybe I'll put it here if I can find it, where she was promoting the ideology that eating more leafy greens reverses gray hair. And there are some people who believe that if you use certain oils or certain herbs or change your lifestyle, your hair will reverse back to black. No. Once that hair follicle does not have enough melanin production to color your hair dark and it grows out of your scalp, that hair is going to remain white. It doesn't matter what you do. However, if you follow a healthy lifestyle, meaning you eat a lot of green, because they are rich in minerals that help in melanin production, which is responsible for the coloring of your hair follicle, you may slow down the rate at which your hair turns gray, but you cannot reverse gray hair. All right. Then the next one is that many people think that only women dye their hair. While majority of people who dye their hair are women, there are many men these days that also dye their hair, and it is nothing new. From the days of old, men have always been dyed their hair. If you still don't know that men dye their hair, you probably have not watched Shaka Zulu. Okay, so those are the few hair myths I've heard surrounding gray hair. Let me know in the comment section below, what other ones did I miss? Which ones were you believing that you finally found out were not true, and at what age did you start graying? And if you are graying, do you keep your hair gray or do you dye your hair? Also, I would love to know, at what age do you think is appropriate for one to own their gray hair? Thank you for listening to this hair story episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.